So we're going to talk a little bit about polling. That's our next topic. So Nik Nanos, he is a leading Canadian pollster, founder of Nanos Research. Nick, how are you?
Good. I'm fine, thanks. How you doing?
Good, thanks. I've always wanted to chat with you because I feel like I've become a little bit more suspect of polls in my later years. They say one thing and then on voting day, something else happens. And so I kind of wanted to ask you about that because, yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, about why am I so jaded lately?
Well, you're jaded about everything, like Canadians don't trust the church. They don't trust the courts. They don't trust the police. They don't trust doctors. Should we really be surprised that they're a little more jaded or cynical about polls? And you know what? It is actually healthy and good to be jaded about that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Because it keeps the pollsters accountable and sharp. And you know what? It's good to ask the tough questions, and it's good to kind of keep everyone accountable. But you know what? I think the reality is that we're living in a world where people are increasingly jaded about everything. So, why don't we just throw in lawyers, doctors, the courts,
real estate agents,
real estate agents, just let's throw everybody into the mix. And, that's just part of the world that we live in.
Right. We're always sleeping with one eye open.
So I don't take it personally.
Okay.
How's that? I don't take it personally when you say you're jaded about polls. It's like, yeah, okay, fine.
Okay.
You're probably jaded about some other things too. I don't feel special.
Absolutely. I would say, and maybe your polling told you that we're all jaded too.
Yes, it did, ironically. And then you'd have to disagree with me. It's kind of like, well, actually, I'm not as jaded as you say that I am.
So how many, let's back up for a little bit. Talk about the polling landscape in terms of how many polling companies are there that operate in the Canadian marketplace?
Oh, there are boatloads. How's that? Not to put a fine point on it. There's probably I would say there's probably about 8 major polling companies in Canada that do national polls that are in the public domain. The polling industry in Canada is quite large. I'm a member of the Canadian Research and Insights Council, which is kind of like the association for market and public opinion research. And we have over, I think, 50 to 60 companies that do everything from market research and customer satisfaction to doing citizen surveys on services for municipalities, through to the stuff that you see in the news. And, maybe one way to think about it is, and I don't know if this will make you even more cynical or not, but what you see in the news is just basically the tip of the iceberg. It's only about probably 5% of all the research, market research and public opinion research and customer research that goes on out there. The rest of it is all done by organizations to help them listen to customers and kind of fine tune what they do.
Well, it's funny. I think I must be on a million polling lists because I'm always getting phone calls and emails. You got to do this poll. You got to do this poll. And I think for a while I used to sell advertising media.
Oh, yeah.
And because I did that, I was always curious and I wanted to see who was doing research, who was polling whom. So I would always fill those things out. So I think because of that, I'm on a million people's lists. And now everybody wants me to do some poll. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. It takes too much work.
Yeah, but you know what? The good news is that if you're dealing with a bona fide market research or public opinion research firm, you should just say, please add me to your do not call list. So, if you get a call from Nanos and you don't want to do any more Nanos surveys, just make sure it's not me calling, it's not my call center.
Okay.
Then I'll never call you again. But, the thing is that, it's quite easy. You should tell the research organization that you no longer want to receive calls from them, and they are actually required to maintain their own do not call list and to not call you again. So now that said, market research is exempt from the national do not call project that's run by the federal government because, the thing is charities, governments, everybody's got to do research. So we're exempt from that. But anyone can ask a research firm that contacts them to say, thanks for reaching out, but I'm not interested in receiving any more calls or contacts from you.
Okay. I love that. That's actually quite helpful. Just as another side note, where are am I getting calls from India, from other countries, or these people calling me from Canada? Well,
the vast majority you're getting calls from Canada. So we have for Nanos, we have our call center is right in Toronto. Always has been in Toronto. and we run out of Canada, and all of our servers are in Canada and stuff like that. The vast majority of Canadian market research companies are that are based in Canada do almost everything basically locally.
Okay, that's good to know, especially in a buy Canadian environment, right? It's certainly important to support local. So, you know, that's really good to know. So let's talk politics now. So last fall in the polls, it was showing that the Conservatives were going to win by a landslide. Like, you know, the Liberals were going to be like basically a memory. And now they're running neck and neck. So whenever we do get to vote, whenever that election is called, what do you expect the results to look like then? Or
probably
can you even say?
Probably not like today. You know, like when people say the only poll that counts is election day, I actually agree with that.
Right.
I don't take offense at that, because here's one thing. First of all, you know, when the Conservatives were leading, the Liberals had been in power for a long time. They'd introduced a capital gains tax. They introduced a carbon tax. And, you know, the longer that a government is in power, the more likely they are to annoy someone about something or multiple things.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And you know, Trudeau had really become a lightning rod. And, you know, as a result, and because of, you know, the Conservatives really doing a good job under Pierre Poilievre, talking about the cost of living and the cost of bread, eggs, that kind of stuff, they're really rewarded. But, you know, the thing is that a couple of things happened that basically were game changers. So first of all, Justin Trudeau's out, right? And for many Canadians, he was really the lightning rod. And then the second thing is Donald Trump, which is kind of unusual to have someone like that basically be kind of like the uninvited guest on Canadian politics, because he's attacking Canada. He's questioning, you know, saying that we should be part of the United States. And now, you know, Canadians, if the election was going to be about, is it time for a change, which is what it was under Justin Trudeau, now it's about who can best manage the relationship with the United States. Now, yes, it's the margin has narrowed. It's basically, I think, 1 percentage point between the Conservatives and the Liberals. But you know what? As soon as the election is called, it's a massive reset button, because the Conservatives will get more coverage. There'll be equal coverage between the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the New Democrats generally, and people will start to really look carefully. So I would be very surprised. And, you know, maybe you can call me back the day after Election Day.
Yeah.
Like, look at 36, 35, 15, and then it'd be like, holy crap, Nanos, those were the actual numbers. But I won't say that I was brilliant. I'd just like to say that. I could just say that it's a fluke, because it's much more likely there'll be something different on Election Day, because the campaign will matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think it's interesting that, I mean, you know, you're talking about some of the points that Pierre Poilievre brought up, and essentially a lot of his talking points have now been taken away, right? Axe the tax, okay, it's gone. Capital gains, it's gone. And so now it's sort of like, okay, what are you going to craft your message around? And it seems like now they're going with Canada first, but then when I was watching Carney speak last week, it looks like they're going with Canada strong. And I'm like, wow, okay, we can't differentiate between either party now.
Yeah, but, you know, the one thing, and the Conservatives still have this, you know, this message that they're putting out, that how different is Mark Carney in this government from the previous government, and that the Liberals have been in power. They're seeking a fourth mandate, and they've been in power for a long time, and they've created, you know, they have to take responsibility for what's happened in the last 10 years. So, you know, I still think that is, although people are really focused on Donald Trump, you know, that's really part of the background, where it's kind of like they're looking at us like, you know, they say, looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Right? You look at the cabinet, it's like a lot of familiar faces, right? And Mark Carney's now been grafted on top of that as an outsider, but it's still there. People thinking that the Liberals have been in power too long and that they're responsible. So that the big question is will that be enough? I don't think it'll be enough. I think it can help the Conservatives, but I think it's going to come down to that for the Conservatives, saying that, but also having a plan and a vision and a strategy for how they're going to deal with Donald Trump.
Right, because you're right. Everything really is about Donald Trump. I mean, we just came back from the provincial election, and even though it's about the province, a good portion of the conversation was, what are we doing about Trump? So he really has sort of given a lightning rod to Canadians to be the only subject matter that we discuss now. But anyways, Nik, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope to have you back at another point, another poll that we can discuss how jaded we are and see what the actual results are going to be. Can't wait.
Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us.